Hey everyone, Braydon here. I'm currently on beautiful Vancouver Island doing some work, and I wanted to make a quick intro to this video. Me and my friend Bailey decided to jump on Skype, have a conversation, almost podcast format, and we talked about a few things. We talked about Eckhart Tolle, we talked about staying present, different things that were going on in our lives, things that were inspiring to us, and it was a really nice conversation. We were both kind of buzzing afterwards, and we wanted to share it with all of you. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoy this conversation I had with my friend Bailey. And to all of you that have been watching my videos, liking, commenting, it really means a lot to me, and I want you to know that I really appreciate it. It's fun making this content, and I want to keep doing it, and to have that support is really quite amazing. So thank you, and I look forward to making more videos. So hope you have a great day and enjoy the following conversation. Bye now.
I'm here with Braydon Germain, who's got hella books in the background. They look...
Knowledge.
You look learned as fuck.
Thanks, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you just collect books, and like they don't really have any like value, like in terms of monetary value after. So like you can't really sell them, or you can't get like your money back out of them because, you know, no one buys them for anything more than like a couple bucks.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I've just like kept them, but I think I'll have to get rid of a few of them. I might just put them on like FaceTime for free or Facebook Marketplace for free, because at least someone else could learn something from them, you know, keep the ones I love.
I like that. I also like books because they're like reminders of where you were at that time when you were reading it, and like reminders of the lessons. So like if I learned a lot from a book, I'll keep it around, and I may not open it anymore, or just occasionally, but I'll still like look at it sometimes, and like it's enough to like be like, oh yeah, like that book taught me some stuff that's applicable to where I am now, that kind of thing.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, how many books you have where you like will revisit it and it has just another profound impact on you, you know, like even like this book, like an Eckhart Tolle book, I'll just put it on audio even, and I'll just listen to it, and it'll just, all of a sudden he'll be talking about something that just like helps you so in the moment with like something you're dealing with.
I find that with Eckhart Tolle specifically to like almost always be the case, because he's on some other frequency that like is just helpful to the whole world. So like, but it also is helpful to you personally because of the exact thing that he's talking about, of like the oneness of everything. And so I just put it on, and he'll be like very often he'll be immediately talking about something that I'm like, I can apply that. That's the exact challenge I've been facing right now. I can apply this like right now. This was so helpful. And a lot of the times also, or like, sometimes it's not that. I don't want to like make the impression that every single time I turn it on, it's like, well, every single time I turn it on, he blows my mind. I can't lie. Yeah. That's someone who I go back to very often, Eckhart Tolle.
Yeah. What do you do when you want someone to read it, but like, I guess it's just not the right time for them to read it, you know, like that's the type of book where you just want everybody to read it. You're just like, you should read this. Like, this is good shit. And they just, you know, I feel like maybe it's just people. What do you think? Like, how do you get people to read this stuff that has been so impactful for you and you want to share that with them?
So you're probably talking about The Power of Now, right?
Well, yeah. And in particular, like, super specific in my life, just like my immediate family, like there's certain people that I would love to like teach that type of philosophy to in order to relieve them of certain stress and anxiety and pain and, you know, all the stuff that comes with like being human, you know, and I think to myself, you know, man, just having one little breakthrough could have such a great impact on your life, because that's what it did for me. And so I think like, I know you shared that book, The Power of Now, with me. And I just wanted to know if you had like a strategy for like sharing that sort of stuff.
Well, first of all, it's really beautiful that you have that feeling to want to share that information and share that freedom that that has impacted you so much, that you were ready to receive.
Yeah.
And you're right in that it seems like not everyone is ready to receive that information at the same time, or like where they are in their lives. And you could get into karma, or you could get into reincarnation, those kinds of things, to kind of like be theories for like why some people seem ready and receptive to that now, as opposed to some people seems like they go their entire life and they're just closed off to ideas of that kind of openness or oneness or the power of now, really. And that's just a really tough one. And I think that the number one thing to do is to be an example of the teachings in your own life. And people might become curious, and then they might ask you questions like, Braydon, it just seems like you're so centered and focused all the time. How do you do that? And then you can say like, well, there's a lot of things that I do, but one of the things that like really helped me was this book, The Power of Now. That really got me on the journey where now I can do these miracle mornings all the time and like all this stuff. And so that might help you. And then yeah, so that's the most important thing.
Yeah, like being it, doing it, and yeah. So it's almost like in order to impact people, you have to commit to living a life of discipline, and because that's how you could have the most impact on people, is to live a life that's so disciplined that you're able to achieve spiritual, you know, personal, career, all these like milestones. And that's like the biggest way that you can influence people. To inspire, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, if we think about the people that really inspire us, like...
Totally disciplined.
Yeah, like name a few people who really inspire you.
I mean, probably the most impactful is Joe Rogan, because of just the ease at which I can listen to those conversations and learn, you know, really satisfy that craving for like learning, and to be like kind of just absorb quality content. At least that's how it seems for me. It's like quality, you know? So I'd say him. I would say like Russell Brand at times has really influenced me, you know?
Me too.
Even watching like Netflix, I was watching the F1 show about the Formula One racing, and like just the dedication and like the competitiveness and the ability to handle like high level amounts of pressure like that in those guys. Like that was really inspiring too.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Is there a season 2 of that right now?
Yeah, the F1 show, season 2 is open, and then the next season is happening right now. So like the races are going on like every week.
Wow. Are you following the races that are happening right now?
I think that watching the Netflix really spiked my interest in the sport again.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe I've had like a 10% more awareness towards what's happening, but it's not like I'm like glued to the TV and like watching all the races.
Mm-hmm.
But I definitely think like it's good branding on their part to put that as a Netflix show, because it's just going to make people want to watch the races.
Definitely. And it also, it brings people in who may not be exposed to it, because like, I think historically it has a very wealthy audience, which means that just certain people aren't going to be exposed to it. But watching it on Netflix, really, that was the first time I have really paid that much attention to F1. And dude, that shit is so insane. I love it. And they really the Netflix show really puts a narrative to it, and puts a narrative to, and I feel like it's a narrative that already exists, but they definitely they can curate what they show you or not, which is why it's cool to think of like hearing it from like maybe someone who's like attended all the races in one year or something. That would be really interesting. But overall, I love that show. I haven't seen season 2. I want to.
Yeah. I kind of just binge watched that one, and just inspiring, man. It's just like the way that they're able to handle all the pressure, and like those poor, just the pressure. It's so cool.
Dude, and they're going so fast, and their cars are so is brittle the right word? They're so like designed for speed only, at the cost of all safety. They just rely on the technical ability of the driver to react and control it, which is what makes it so
exciting,
incredible and exciting. And in a way, we're all in an F1 car, which is our like physical existence on this world, and we can drive the car like an F1 racer, maybe a little bit with
you can learn to drive it like it.
Maybe with a little bit more restraint, because those guys, oh my god. But still, it's fun to think about.
How do you train your body or your mind to be able to, like, if you think about, like, say there's like, racing that happens when you're like a kid, you're like doing go-karts, and then you like eventually get up to the point where you're like racing F1. If we are in fact F1 cars, our bodies, how do you like to increase the speed at which or increase the level of car that you can get into, or start driving your body like faster?
I think that the key
to
driving,
what I'm saying, right?
Yeah, the key to driving an F1 car is complete presence, right? In the moment, in the flow, and
reactionary.
A lot of the times when people crash, they're in their head. I actually don't have numbers on that, but I feel like in interviews, people talk about that. They're like, I just got in my head. You know what I mean? When they like make a big mistake or something. Yeah. So the ideal F1 racer is completely present the entire race.
Yeah.
And Eckhart Tolle talks about this, about like when he's talked about adrenaline junkies and how, like, for example, if you're climbing up the side, if you're free climbing up the side of a mountain and it's really steep, you have to be completely present. You have to be, otherwise you would die. And people love feeling present. So they equate being on the side of a mountain to being present, because your mind has to shut off for that moment of time. But you can also cultivate that. You don't have to be on the side of a mountain to do that. You can cultivate that sitting down. Also, like tennis matches, if you watch tennis players, that's another good example. Like a really good tennis match, people are so present that, like,
zoned in, dialed in.
Yeah, in the zone.
So focused.
So that's what I would say about driving your F1 car to its fullest potential.
It's presence.
Yeah, that's the main answer. And I feel like there's a lot of other smaller or more specific answers that could probably help individual situations, like if you have like specific goals or something. But the overarching thing is presence. And I find that, well, one, it took me a long time to realize when I was being present or not. You know, I feel like making that distinction is one of the first fundamental things if you're interested in this kind of pursuit. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so like in order to be present, you have to be able to start identifying areas in your life or situations that occur where you're not being present.
Yeah.
Is that what you're kind of saying?
Yeah, I think that's one of the ways to start out this journey. But then noticing when you are present and becoming comfortable with that feeling. And I think those are two sides of the same coin. What you just said, I think, is also presence, because you can't notice that you weren't being present without being present, if that makes sense. Like you are being present when you notice that you aren't being present. So that's the beginning of presence. That's what Eckhart Tolle talks about a lot. And then becoming comfortable with that.
You know, sometimes I often am like in situations where I'm like, hey, I need to figure out this situation. And my instinct is to ruminate on it, think about it, like figure it out. And perhaps, you know, the real idea is to do practices that allow you to be so present that you get like the answer that's almost presented to you, instead of you trying to like dissect and, you know, weigh pros and cons in your head, you know, and try to figure it out. It's more so about like learning how to quiet your mind so much that you're able to accept the really good ideas or the answer.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Which is so funny. It's like, and it's like, you gotta somehow have that as your reminder. You're like reminding you of that all the time. Excuse me.
Yes. Constant reminding is one of the next steps after you start to recognize when you're being present.
Right.
Because and Russell Brand talks about this a lot, and I identify with this a lot, that Russell Brand goes in and out of presence every day, and we all do, but he's very vocal about how he gets attached to his ego and his thoughts maybe like 100, 200 times a day. But noticing it is like the most powerful part, and it's the reminder to come back to presence that is what is so powerful. And it's also like part of the goal, because you can't will yourself to be present 100% of the time. Presence is like a lack of willpower in a way. It's an allowing type thing.
Right. It oscillates.
Yeah. It's like a sine wave.
Right. And so maybe then having the certain practices like meditation or yoga, or those practices allow you to like almost speed up the frequency at which you're coming into presence and out of presence.
Yeah.
So instead of like it being every like 5 days where you're like coming into presence and then you're out of presence, it's this quicker vibration where you're, like I read the Transcendental Meditation book that I have. It's really good. But he talks about how it's like you're like a rag, and when you meditate, you're quieting your thoughts, so your mind is like going deeper into oneness. And as you get to oneness, it's like dipping your consciousness into oneness. And then as you come out of the meditation, your rag is like dripping wet. And so you're walking around the world with this like wet rag of oneness. And as the day continues, the rag dries up and you don't have it left. And so that's why you got to go back and meditate again, so that you're just constantly kind of dipping the rag, living with the rag as it dries. And then once it's dry, you got to go back and dip your rag back into the well. And that's how the 20-minute practice is supposed to kind of color your life, or like, give your life more bliss and enjoyment, is that you're like operating with this wet rag. And that just comes with presence and understanding and empathy and bliss and, happiness. And it's all these like positives,
Oof, that's awesome.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
I wonder how Eckhart Tolle got to his level of understanding. Like, is that studying of philosophy, all the philosophies, but also coming up with, or being a therapist for years and like really being devoted to understanding human psychology? I just wonder how he went about learning and becoming more so aware. Do you know?
I know a little from what he's talked about, and I kind of intuit the rest, so it's kind of my but my understanding is that it was kind of a Goldilocks situation where circumstances were just right, kind of in the way that circumstances have to be just right for there to be life on Earth. It was kind of like universal forces conspired in one instance. But and his pivotal moment that he describes in The Power of Now, and I've heard him describe it verbally, is that he struggled with intense anxiety and depression, but I think mostly anxiety, and he was engaged in kind of the academic world a lot, and
Right.
he was like really, really a part of that world, and like filled with a huge amount of anxiety, and he would have panic attacks. And then in the middle of the night, one night, he had the thought, I can't live with myself any longer. And then he looked at that thought and he said, that's interesting. There must be two of me. If I can't live with myself any longer, who's the I that can't live with myself any longer? And he had a satori, or like an awakening, like that stopped his mind from its incessant monkey minding, its incessant thoughts that were like, believe me, this is so important. This is what reality is. And so then he experienced a flood of consciousness energy, and then he became partially unable to interact with the external world, the real world, for a while, and he lived on like park benches and stuff. And then he began to gradually be able to engage with the world again, but it was such a shift in his paradigm that it was hard for him as a physical form to interact with the world, because he became so one with the universe that it's like, I imagine it as incredibly disorienting. Some of the experiences like that I've had on like psychedelics have felt extremely disorienting in a way that takes a while to get used to. And now if I take a psychedelic, I feel like I respond to that kind of feeling differently, because I've become more comfortable with that shift in perspective. So it was a huge shift in perspective for him that took years to integrate. And then he started having small groups where he would hold talks or like conversations. People came to him because he was so present that people were naturally drawn to him. And that's how it is now. And I think that when you are that present, intuitions from the universe can just like flow through you, because you're like an open channel for creation to like flow through you. And I think that's where humanity gets our inspiring ideas from, like our ideas that seem inspired. I think that's because you were an open channel for creation to flow through you, even if it was just for a moment.
Wow. Yeah, it's so cool to hear that, because I don't know if I've ever read The Power of Now. I think that maybe I have it as an audiobook, so I should maybe listen to that story, because that's pretty inspiring. And that he is so present, and that's why people are drawn to him, and he's been able to, like, think about how many, he's like kind of like, you know, different but the same, like Tony Robbins, how they like able to touch so many people. Yeah,
I really like Tony Robbins. And I think that Tony Robbins has like a lot of really useful things to like, like ways of looking at your brain, and like changing the foundation and the structure so that you engage in the world in a way that makes you more fulfilled and makes other people more fulfilled from just being by you. I feel like Tony Robbins, probably everywhere he goes, he's just like fulfilling people's lives. He's like the Oprah of self-fulfillment. But yeah. Although Oprah is the Oprah of self-fulfillment too.
Yeah. Well, she's I think on the same level, but I mean, she definitely understands the idea of manifestation and affirmations and spirituality and presence and stuff. She's kind of like the one that really got me onto Eckhart Tolle.
Yeah, she had him on.
Yeah, and dude, it was like I at the time was looking for a book that was about life, and I saw that because it said Oprah's book club on it, and I just had a Chapters or like a bookstore, and I like, so it's like Oprah's book club. Well, if it's good enough for Oprah, it's probably good enough for me. At least that's what I thought then.
Yeah.
And so I bought it, and dude, that was like that's been my Bible.
That's amazing.
Yeah, but Tony Robbins, it's that whole idea of like reframe. It's about reframing your foundation, like you said, and really kind of like describing how our brains work in this such an aha kind of moment. Like you hear someone talk about like that, how you're perceiving certain situations, and then you're just like, oh my God, it's like this like insane breakthrough, and like all of a sudden and the other thing I think that they do at those big Tony Robbins events is that people around you are having all these breakthroughs, and he's like talking to people and they're having breakthroughs. And as you're like totally entrenched in what's going on around you, you're listening to this person having a breakthrough, and you're like seeing parallels in your own life. And so you're saying to yourself like, oh my God, that's what I've done to this person, or like, oh man, like, or it just, I think all that, it's just this like, this effect that has such power over everyone around you, and that's what I think happens at those conferences is people are having these breakthroughs, and you're watching it, and you're just like having your own breakthroughs from watching other people have breakthroughs. And then obviously the way that they teach it, and get you involved helps you look at your life. But yeah, it's really cool. It's so cool that they could have such a reach. Highly recommend that documentary on Netflix, the Tony Robbins one.
Oh, I haven't seen that one.
Oh, I'm Not Your Guru.
I'm Not Your Guru. That's what it's called.
Yeah, Tony Robbins, dude, it's amazing.
Wow. I
mean, it's amazing in the fact that like, I feel like Landmark's very similar to it, but it's amazing in that it's like, it's just seeing people like who are just on the brink, man. They're just like going to these Tony Robbins events because they're just like on the edge. They've got nothing left, and they're, at least some of them. And they go and he's just so powerful, man. You see it in that show.
Yeah, and I've watched videos of some of his events, and some people just in tears of joy or whatever. Yeah. And I'm not gonna lie, I've teared up to a few of those clips because he's just like, and he's fully there for you, like super present. And I think that it gives him a lot of joy to elevate other people to their own power. And I think that's a great thing about what he does, is that he shows you your own power. And so maybe to address what you were talking about a while ago at the start of this, some people would respond better to Tony Robbins than Eckhart Tolle. Some people might think that the two aren't even related. They're like, oh, Tony Robbins, he like does concrete reframing of your mental models. that's gonna like change your world. That's like real world stuff. Eckhart Tolle, he's just like, he's talking about consciousness, universe, whatever. I don't vibe with that. I think that they overlap. I see them as part of the same thing, but there's definitely some that certain people vibe with sooner rather than later. And that same person who might have like dissed Eckhart Tolle, if he like does a Tony Robbins course, he or she or they, and then is like, oh my God, Tony Robbins changed my life.
Yeah.
And they might after having that experience be like, oh yeah, and Eckhart Tolle, that's like very similar to what Tony's talking about. I think I'll go explore that more. But like, you know, so I guess the point is like, they may not see the similarities at first, but then once they go down one path, they'll start to see the similarities between the two.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, dude, that's the cool thing about it. I think, you know, Tony obviously has like it's a system, and it's a business. He's in the business of like changing people's lives, you know, and he does it really well. And I think that's how his course is designed, is for that, like 6 days, you're going to go to this course and you're going to, like 95% of you are going to be changed forever because you took this course. You know, that's like his goal. Whereas like, I think the Eckhart Tolle is more like, if you went to one of his events, I think that you would get a chance to hear some great back and forth with people. You know, you'd understand, like he would explain some things, but I don't think it's the same like energy, or like, it's not the same business. Like they're not in the same business.
No. And the business side of it is how they operate in the world. I think some of the teachings can overlap. But Eckhart Tolle is probably not going to teach you how to run your business, you know, for example. But I think that probably most people who go to an Eckhart Tolle event, their lives are changed forever. They just may not realize it, you know. They might go and be like, that gave me nothing, but then somehow realize 10 years down the line, like, oh, that actually like was a big impact. My like negative reaction to it led me down a path that led me to a spiritual growth, or something. But yeah, I think on the surface their energy can be different, and they definitely have different branding. Eckhart Tolle has minimal branding. He has people do his brand though. And I don't know how that came up. I would love to ask him, but I feel like everything, it probably just like sprang up into existence because he's just like literally, I mean, he's not, when you're that enlightened, you don't identify with your physical body as much. You don't identify with what society puts values on as much. And what a lot of people want when they seek self-help is, how I want my external situations to change. That's going to bring me happiness. Like I want my business to do better. That's going to bring me happiness. I want to know how to attract people that I'm attracted to. That's going to like make me happy. And Eckhart doesn't operate from those levels. Eckhart operates like basically at the deepest level, where what you think you want is actually not, or like what most people think they want is actually not what they want. They want to feel a sense of happiness and a sense of deep fulfillment and satisfaction. And if you're truly present, then you feel that all the time. You still feel feelings of like whatever feelings your body is feeling, but you're not as identified with them. And I think that's one difference, or that's just like one aspect of why Eckhart Tolle's image into the world is the way it is, you know?
Yeah. Wow. So then how do you, I guess then do you just like leave it to faith that everything will work out great if you just give in to finding presence?
I think that at first you might have to rely on faith, but faith is not really, well, let me make sure that I'm saying things correctly. And this obviously is my intuition. But my feeling is that you, over time, as presence grows in your life, you start to develop a sense of security that is just there. And it doesn't have to rely on faith that that future events will be fine, or that the future will be taken care of, because, well, for one, future is really just a thought form. Like, the future can only be thought about and never experienced. So we're always just experiencing right now. And if you and that feeling, if you can like sit with that feeling and feel that profoundly, that's synonymous with feeling secure in yourself. And like, there's probably a lot of things in almost everyone's lives that would be nice to happen, but don't end up happening. But in some strange way, the things that truly matter to you do seem to happen. They just happen if you live in presence the majority of the time. The things that you really think that you would need, or the things that will provide you deep satisfaction. And a lot of these things are like external things too. But like Eckhart Tolle talks about, that's just the icing on the cake, basically. The cake is the presence that you develop. And so, yeah. So to answer that briefly, you develop a sense of security and confidence as presence becomes something that you live more of your life based in.
Right. Wow.
Dude, good talk.
Excellent. Yeah, excellent job, dude. Like explaining that. I really appreciate your just the way you frame it, and you know, it's always so stimulating.
Dude, it's so stimulating to talk with you.
Yeah.
I love it. I love this conversation. I see that that this screen recording is now like 18 gigabytes. So
let's end it there.
Let's end it there. But
all right, buddy.
Awesome. This was great. Thank you for anyone listening, or to anyone listening.
Yeah. Thanks for listening to that.
Thanks for listening, guys.
It brings some insight.
Yeah.